Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us again today for another weekly walk. Today, we will be celebrating belatedly Mother's Day in the park today, May 17th, 2023. And of course, my name is Carla, and I will be your tour guide today. And I am a tour guide with the Central Park Conservancy. So thank you everyone for joining us and continuing to support the Central Park Conservancy. Before we get started on our weekly walk today, just a reminder of your Zoom features that you can use. So a reminder, if you should have any questions throughout the weekly walk today, please use our Q&A feature. You can find that along the top on your Zoom toolbar, and my colleague Ryan will be on the back end to answer any of your questions. And if you would like to use the chat function to say hello or comment on anything, you can certainly use the chat function. But remember, you can always close the chat window if you don't wish to see it. There's a little X in the corner, and you can also turn off viewing the previews of the chats. If you just click the little arrow that appears next to that chat icon, and then you can uncheck show chat previews if you don't wish to see those. But as always, our mission here at the Central Park Conservancy is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. So thank you for joining us again to help us in that mission as we continue to bring these weekly walks to you every Wednesday at 12:30. So on our walk today to celebrate Mother's Day and really celebrate all those who care for us, any caretakers or nurturers or other loved ones in our family, we're going to take a little walk entering at West 69th Street, and then making our way a little bit south and east into the park. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on our walk. And we're going to enter here at this gate at 69th Street. And this just happens to be a gate that is not named in the park. So if you think you have a name that you would give this gate, you can go ahead and put it in the comments field, if in the chat, if you'd like to. And as soon as we start to enter the park, we can already see how really full and lush and green it is. And some folks already enjoying the park on a spring day. And we also see a Central Park Conservancy employee at hard work, keeping the park looking so clean and green. And as we make our way along the path, on our right, we immediately see this little plaque here that says, "Deep in their roots, all flowers keep the light." And this is actually a line from a poem by Theodore Rothko. And he was an American poet that who I had previously not heard of before noticing this little rock and plaque. But he was really deeply influenced by the greenhouses that were owned by his family. And so he wrote quite a bit of poetry about his own personal human experience, and also a lot of poetry relating to nature and plants. His family was from Michigan, and you can really see just in this picture how much the plants are absorbing that light that they will store down in their roots, that energy. And of course, one of the things that plants can do with all that stored energy as they make their food through photosynthesizing, absorbing those beautiful sun rays, is make gorgeous flowers like these columbine flowers that we see here next to us on the path. And I believe these are the native columbines that we have here, our native columbine flowers. And as we're appreciating the flowers, we can also appreciate, we happen to meet Yuri, who is helping us here to take care of all these plantings. And Yuri shared with me that she frequently enjoys these weekly walks So if you're watching today, you're say hello, and we just want to share our appreciation for your hard work in keeping the garden, keeping all of the park looking so beautiful. But let's keep making our way down the path into the park. And on our right, in this sort of dappled shade area, we notice some other kinds of plantings. We definitely see some geraniums here with a rhododendron in the background. And what I believe might be the Star of Bethlehem, might be these little white flowers that we see tucked away. And just across from us is some more flowers, but these occur on a flowering tree. And this is a dogwood tree. So let's take a closer look at those really interesting flower shapes that we see right across the way there. I really love dogwood flowers, and we have a few different kinds in Central Park. And these are really beautiful, creamy yellow with those 4 petals. They're kind of pointy in this example with those really interesting sort of button centers. I believe this is a Kusa dogwood tree. But let's keep enjoying the spring sunlight in the park and make our way a little further down the path. And then we immediately notice some lilacs. Of course, if we are celebrating Mother's Day, we can't forget the flowers on Mother's Day. And we definitely will be taking note of lots of flowers today. And I don't know about you, but when I am moving through the park and I'm noticing a lilac bush, I really like to get very, very close to get a really good smell of those lilacs. So let's stick our face right in there, right into the flowers, and take a really strong whiff of that delicious lilac smell. And then just beyond that lilac bush, we see a really nice kind of dappled shade area that would be perfect as a picnic spot if you wanted to take your mom or another loved one to the park for a picnic. And sharing this space with you if you forgot to bring a bouquet. There are already growing flowers growing right here for you and your loved one to enjoy, not by picking, just by looking. But we have these beautiful rhododendrons that are flowering in the park right now. And we can appreciate this tree, one of the trees that's giving us that beautiful shade in this area. And it has some interesting things growing on it that maybe we want to take a closer look at. They almost look like flowers, but these are actually these interesting winged green shapes that we see here. This is actually the fruit of the hornbeam tree. The fruit of the tree is a little nutlet that is attached to sort of winged bracts, and those are those light green sort of wing shapes that you see there. Just another little interesting detail that we can appreciate of one of the many trees in Central Park. But let's keep making our way. And I think I see something that looks kind of fun off in the distance there. So let's keep moving ahead. And it turns out we are passing by some playgrounds. We have playgrounds actually on either side of us, on our left and our right here. And so on our right, we first see Adventure Playground. And with a quick little peek inside, right away, we see some really interesting and unique play structures, a really fun slide to slide down. And I just want to remind folks as we make our way into the playground that typically you would not be able to enter a playground as an adult unless you're accompanied by a child. So just a reminder, we're just going to take a brief look here. And if you have attended any of our other weekly walks or some of our other weekly walks, you may have remembered attending some with my colleague Desiree, who has provided us with lots of information about our playgrounds and our adventure playgrounds. So I won't get into too many details here with us today, but I'll just touch on it briefly. But this is one of our 4 adventure style playgrounds in Central Park. And as this plaque informs us, This is with thanks from the Lauder family, of the Estee Lauder family, in 1966. And this playground was designed by architect Richard Datner, who also designed some other playgrounds in Central Park. And we call them adventure playgrounds because they have really unique designs. So rather than having sort of uniform play structures that you would see in any playground, they're a little more unique and custom, and they're intended to inspire more creative play from children. So as a result, we see lots of interesting structures to climb. And so it kind of invites kids to imagine secret worlds. Everything's not just laid out for them, slide down the slide, swing on the swing, but maybe they can come up with some more imaginative ways to play in this space. And the designer, Richard Datner, actually consulted with childhood development experts. He conducted an anthropological investigation of children who were playing in New York City. And he led meetings with neighborhood moms and other parents to help sort of inform his design of the adventure playground. And you can see they're a real departure from just the typical design of a playground, or perhaps a Robert Moses era playground. But we'll talk more about Robert Moses in just a moment, because he definitely comes up in this area. And as we make our way out of the adventure playground, this sign reminds us that all of our playgrounds are cared for through our playground partners, which is a division of our Women's Committee. So we'll now make our way down the path and check out that other playground that we saw. And we come to Tarcoin Tots Playground. Now, this playground is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it's designed intentionally for younger children, but it's also interesting because this is the location of the Battle of Central Park. And I'm not referring to a battle from the Revolutionary War or even the War of 1812 that we often like to talk about. And there's a lot of history in the park. But this battle actually is dating back to a different time. It's how we refer to a conflict that erupted between local mothers and other parents on the Upper West Side and the Parks Commissioner, Robert Moses. At the time, his administration had planned to build a parking lot for Tavern on the Green, which is just next to us, and we'll visit in a moment. But mothers and families had really enjoyed spending time in this landscape. And the story goes that a mother discovered, and one of the engineers had left behind his blueprints on a bench. And so they learned of the plan that this would all be paved over for a parking lot for Tavern on the Green. And those mothers organized to protest that change and that development of a parking lot. But even after the New York City Parks Department started that construction, the protests continued, and they eventually led to a lawsuit that defeated the project. But since the site had already been altered, trees were felled and vegetation was removed, the New York City Parks decided to create a playground on the site as sort of a concession to the families. Here is an image we have from the New York Daily News archive of the mothers actually coming out to stand there and stop the construction equipment. And this was really a case, even though, as we spoke in another weekly walk about Robert Moses and dealing with the media and how folks were feeling about what he was doing, this was a group of mothers who really were pretty well connected. They knew how to communicate and connect with the media, and they also had access to good lawyers, which is likely why the project ended with a lawsuit. But here we can see a political cartoon from the time showing Robert Moses admitting defeat with mothers. And so the mothers won the Battle of Central Park in the end. But speaking of Tavern on the Green, let's go ahead and visit that next, since we're right next to that spot here. And so if you are looking for a way to treat your mom or other loved one or caretaker, perhaps one idea is to bring them to Tavern on the Green. And if you're going to bring them to Tavern on the Green, maybe you even want to rent a stretch limo to bring your mother or other loved one to Tavern on the Green. Of course, there are other transportation options, other horse-powered options. And there are also some man-powered options to get your mom or other loved one to Tavern on the Green. But since we're here, let's not forget to notice at least a few of the beautiful details of this interesting building. Since we're talking about mothers and caretakers, it's worth mentioning that, of course, Tavern on the Green was built originally as a place for the caretaking of the sheep who grazed out on Sheep Meadow. And we can see just a few of the intricate details of this building designed by Calvert Vaux's assistant, Jacob Raymold. And we'll make our way around the building here, past the bicycles, of course, another option for getting your mom or other loved one to Tavern on the Green. And we notice some more beautiful columbine flowers. Now, this is not a spot I would come to enjoy beautiful plantings necessarily, but they are really beautiful. So let's take a closer look at these interesting flowers. These are really some of my favorites, and I wasn't expecting to find such beautiful flowers just on the side of the Tavern on the Green building, but we will appreciate beauty wherever we find it. And you can really see with this closer picture, you can kind of see the structure of this flower. And I really love the delicate pale pink colors and the interesting shapes of these flowers. And columbine is the genus Aquilegia, and that comes from the Latin aquila, A-Q-U-I-L-A, meaning eagle, which refers to these sort of hooks on the flower shape that some folks felt resembled the talons of an eagle. And making our way around Tavern on the Green, we see lots of people enjoying the outdoor seating with this warm spring weather that we're enjoying. And some additional beautiful plantings. I really had never appreciated all of the beautiful trees and other vegetation growing around Tavern on the Green, but it is worth checking out. Lots of different colors and shapes and textures happening here, providing shade. And of course, if you perhaps didn't have reservations for Tavern on the Green, or it's a little bit pricey for you, there's always the Tavern to Go option. But maybe you have a more DIY, do-it-yourself approach to dining in Central Park and treating your mother or other loved one. So perhaps you want to go for a picnic. And what better place to go for a picnic than Sheep Meadow? And all you need, if you don't need any reservations here, as long as Sheep Meadow is open, you just need a blanket perhaps, and your own packed sandwiches or other snacks, ideally in some reusable containers that you can carry out of the park when you leave. You just have to find the right place to sit. But really, with these kind of iconic views of Central Park and the city, there are no bad spots to sit. Although perhaps if you're bringing your mom or another loved one, perhaps you'd want some more shady seating than some of these sunbathers are enjoying at this moment. But there are no bad views in Sheep Meadow. But let's make our way back out, because I don't know about you, but I actually didn't pack a picnic lunch today, so we might as well make our way out of Sheep Meadow, taking back with us everything that we brought in, of course, and make our way down the path. And we notice that the Central Park Conservancy has been doing some tree trimming, it looks like, on our right here. And I'm wondering if perhaps that will be brought down to the mount for composting. Let's hope so. And then we can make our way carefully across the drive. And make our way down the road. And before we make our way all the way down the road, let's go ahead and launch our poll. We've visited just a couple of little spots in Central Park to take your mom or other loved one that you want to celebrate and appreciate. And I know that I have brought my family to Central Park many, many times. And I'm curious, what is your favorite spot to bring your loved one? So do you love to bring your loved one maybe to a shaded bench along the mall to enjoy the elms and do some people watching? Or perhaps you want to take them to the Ramble and just take some long, quiet walks and have some good long talks. Or maybe you take them to Sheep Meadow for lounging and picnicking. Take them to the Mere if you like to watch ducks and geese, maybe do a little bit of fishing. Or maybe you bring them to Belvedere Castle because you treat your family like royalty. Or there are so many other spots in Central Park, obviously, that you could bring your loved ones to. So if there's another spot not here, you can go ahead and select other and let us know in the chat, where do you like to bring your loved ones? I'm seeing the Reservoir, which is a great suggestion, and the Pinetum. I see Conservatory Water. I almost put some of these in the choices. It was very hard. I almost put Shakespeare Garden also. Cherry Blossoms. I'm seeing a lot of Reservoir. That's a great place to bring folks. Great. So there's plenty of options. Your family bench, if you have a bench. That's great. Perfect way to celebrate your family. And the North Woods, yeah. And Strawberry Fields. Awesome. So many selections. It's great to hear all the different places that you guys like to bring your family and other loved ones. It looks like out of the choices that we offered, the winner so far is the Ramble, which is great. So lots of folks like taking long walks and talking with their family members, which is good. And after that, a shaded bench, which is also great. So we make our way down the path here. And before we end our walk together today, we want to take one more beautiful look at this kind of another iconic view of Central Park. I have to say, personally, I'm not a huge fan of these tall, skinny skyscrapers, but this view in total is one that I never get tired of looking at. I absolutely love this view of Central Park with the skyscrapers peeking up overhead. And now, of course, we've come to the dairy. And of course, the dairy, as we can see, it's looking very sharp right now, as it was pretty recently restored by the Central Park Conservancy. That restoration project was completed in 2021. And of course, the dairy was designed by Calvert Vaux, and it was constructed about 1871. And the dairy welcomes visitors to the nearby Children's District. But it was originally designed to be a place for mothers and children to enjoy fresh, clean milk. And sometimes when I bring folks to the dairy, they ask if it's a place where the sheep from Sheep Meadow were milked, but not to my knowledge. But fresh, clean milk was brought in to the dairy to be made available to mothers and children, and some other snacks and games that they could borrow for the nearby lawn. But if it seems funny to offer milk as a refreshing beverage in Central Park, the idea came from a swill milk scandal that had occurred a few years earlier in New York City. At that time, around 1858, milk was not regulated, and some milk was coming from cows who were not being well cared for. They were being kept in close, unclean quarters and being fed not well on only the byproducts of alcohol production and distilleries and beer brewing. And due to this, the milk that came from these cows was especially thin and sort of bluish gray. So to make it look really appetizing, thick and creamy and white, they added plaster of Paris to that milk to make it, the consistency and the color that people would want to drink. Well, it made it look more appetizing, but of course it then made it poisonous. And very sadly, there were many, many casualties of this swill milk scandal in New York City. And with that memory, even though years ago that memory was fresh enough in their minds, the designers wanted to offer fresh, clean milk to mothers and children at the dairy. Of course, the other thing that the dairy provides us with is some beautiful shaded seating, which we can enjoy here on this bench. And we've taken quite a bit of a walk today, so I think we can take a sit for a moment. And end our little time together with this gorgeous view of the park here as we sit in this beautiful shaded seating and just appreciate the park around us. And as we appreciate, the hard work that the Central Park Conservancy and all of my colleagues put into caring for the park, we also want to take this moment to thank all those that care for us, whether those be our mothers or other caretakers and nurturers in our lives, all those loved ones who help to care for us, just as we all care for our beloved Central Park also. I want to thank all of you so much for joining us again today for our weekly walk and taking a little stroll through Central Park to talk about some places where you can bring your mom or your loved ones. I hope that everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day, however you sort of observe or acknowledge that day and the loved ones in your lives. And I also want to let you know about a tour coming up called Who Built Central Park, looking at the history of the construction of some of these beautiful views and designs that we are always appreciating here in Central Park. So that is coming up with a couple of times on Sunday, May 21st. So thank you for making your way from West 69th Street all the way south and east to the dairy with me today. And thank you for joining us every Wednesday at 12:30 for these weekly walks. It's a pleasure to appreciate the park with you. And we hope to see you again soon, whether that's online. You can connect with us via all kinds of social media, or perhaps we'll see you in person in the park. But until the next time, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your continued support of the Central Park Conservancy. Stay safe and be well. Bye, everyone. Thank you.